What if I told you you don't need 275 energy or even a Banished Lord Talisman to play Death Trap? Yeah, every single human being and their dog is playing Death Trap Season 8 of Diablo 4, but there's something missing from their builds. They can't actually clear tier 109. What I'm talking about has nothing to do with my appearances. We're actually using Perdition instead of Shaco. We're using a Legendary Amulet instead of BLT, Banished Lord's Talisman. And we are getting the Death Trap cooldown reduction on all of these items, along with the boss power. Urivar's Lob Bombs, another 15%, and it gets our Death Trap to, when we're out of town, run kitty run! It's under 10 seconds, which means because we have 150 energy because of our Beastfall boots, we proc Preparation twice. 75 plus 75 equals 10 seconds, ultimate cooldown reduction, so when I click Death Trap, we can spam it, no problem. Now, the beautiful thing about this is exposure to key passive gets 100% damage, not bad, but for the classic build that everyone's playing, you needed to use momentum to reach 275 energy. No, that seems like nonsense to me. When I started this season, I was like, what are people doing? You're sacrificing close quarters combat. That is 300% more damage. It just seemed like a no-brainer to make this work, and here we are. It turns out it's pretty good. The thing about close quarters combat is you have to damage a close enemy with both a marksman and a cutthroat skill. So Shadow Step, beautiful. We click on an enemy. Let's find something to click on. Boom! But now, where's our marksman skill? Well, let me tell you, Caltrops. It is a a trap. But through this aspect, mired sharpshooters, we turn Caltrops into a marksman skill that reapplies our close quarters combat over time and is also making things vulnerable. Pretty convenient. And because this build is utilizing Perdition, we get a lot of crit chance. Combined with Starless Skies, even more crit chance. I'm reaching 100% crit chance, which isn't even necessary because we have Concealment. By using Concealment before every Death Trap, we have 100% crit chance too. But for those of you who don't want to hurt your wrists, what you're going to do is simply skip this Dance Macabre board in my Paragon tree, which is the only reason we're using Concealment to get another 75% damage, but it's harder to play. You skip this board and replace it with Exploit Weakness. You do a little less damage, but what wouldn't you do to save your wrist? Come on. I know what you might be thinking, Matthias, the BLT version overpowers all the time. Well, yeah, so do we with the Xan rune combination. We're going to be overpowering like 40% of the time. And a free tip, if you don't have perfect gear, you don't have these Beastfall boots with 51 max energy, what you can do is simply roll on your amulet some maximum resource. Combined with your boots and amulet with max resource, you're gonna hit 150 energy and you can start this build quite early. You don't need perfect gear at all. And in my opinion, it's even easier, despite what all the other creators are gonna say that this build is the push variant and don't even try it if you're not gonna push. I played it from level 1. I never went for the BLT shenanigans. I didn't bother with the 275 energy and it worked out fine. I mean, you're gonna be squishier, but unless you're in hardcore, I don't mind dying. I kind of like living on the edge sometimes. If I'm immortal, like, where's the thrill? And of course, on all my items, I'm tempering damage to close enemies because that is going to be a multiplicative bonus to our key passive close quarters combat that I mentioned earlier. And another reason Death Trap is obviously so strong is because of this Scoundrel's Leathers that makes trap skills into core skills. And we're getting core ranks, boom, core ranks, boom, core ranks. Now, I do realize you might not have heard a single thing I've said this video because you're busy looking at my package, but for the boss powers, using the cooldown reduction from Urivar's, I've got damage, and the ability to execute everything but the bosses whenever they hit 25% life. It's pretty good, especially when you're pushing. For the top pushing, you're actually going to be wanting to use the Flesh Reapers because it helps us more on the bosses, which eventually, the higher you go in the pit, starts becoming more of an issue. So you can save more time by running Flesh Reapers instead of this execute shenanigans. And that is also why we're tempering crowd control duration on our gloves. That buffs the Flesh Reapers effect. And another thing you might think is crazy, which I know, I think is pretty crazy too. My first thing I tell new players in Diablo, like, always max your armor and resistances, but this build does not do that, which is kind of wacky. I mean, we could do it. We could roll armor on our gloves and our rings, even our amulet, but we are going for the glass cannon pit pushing variant where we just want to deal as much damage as possible. I want to see that orange number above the enemies when I hit them be a really big number, you know? Here's a quick rundown of the skill tree. We're not really using anything in the beginning here. The first skill notable is this Shadow Step. I mentioned we were squishy, but Shadow Step does help. We get 20% DR every time we use it for 3 seconds. It's pretty good. We got Caltrops. The freeze doesn't really matter because we're using Thol, one of the runes that casts Sorcerer's Frost Nova everywhere. So I just kind of enjoy the blue color of Caltrops. If we could remove that point, doesn't really matter. Here is Conceal concealment. Because I'm at 100% crit chance, I can pick up this side node, gives me 10% dodge chance. Not really necessary, but it could save my life, you know? But if you don't have 100% crit chance, you should use this one, subverting concealment. And the rotation is basically concealment, death trap, concealment, death trap, over and over and over and over again. And you cast your other spells on a boss or whenever there's an elite that's not really dying in front of you. Now, if you pay attention to this little passive, it's Malice. This one gives 24% damage to both vulnerable enemies and knocked down enemies at the same time. So how do we knock down enemies? With poison trap, plus another extra 20%. We've got shadow imbuement for 2 reasons. Everything we shadow imbue takes increased damage. You might be thinking, with shadow step, you can only apply the imbuement to one target. No, that's where you are wrong. Check this temper out. Shadow step cleaves, and this applies the shadow imbuement to everything. Like Mippy told me about this, and it is a huge AoE. So basically applying shadow imbuement to the entire screen. And the second reason we're using shadow imbuement is because of the Eldritch Bounty Paragon node, which gives us another 30% increased damage. As you can see, my death trap is rank 22, and up until rank 20, it's actually decreasing the cooldown, which is essential for us to reach that 10-second threshold. Now, if you made it to this video and you're like a beginner, you don't have amazing gear like I do, I've played like way too much, skip close quarters combat. You see, it's giving me 300% damage, but with 0 effort, you can use exposure, and it's 100% damage. It's basically the same thing, and it also solves your cooldown issues. If you don't have enough cooldown, you don't have enough ranks, you don't have 150 energy, just use exposure. You can slap in a basic or core skill to use it to attack things, to trigger exposure. That's what I did when I started out, and it worked great. What I would recommend is you use exposure whilst accumulating the close quarters combat gear, and once you've tempered, you've masterworked your weapons, you've got a lot of close damage, you've got a lot of damage to close enemies, you can have a peek at this key passive and see if the current damage increase is actually outscaling the exposure. And then once you've decked out your character more, you swap over from exposure to close quarters combat and you're good to go. The Paragon is pretty simple. We got versatility in the starter board. We're moving into no witnesses here using the ambush glyph. And as mentioned previously, we have Eldritch Bounty here with the canny glyph. Our 4th board is the one that you can exchange if you don't like to ruin your wrists and you don't mind sacrificing a little bit of damage. You know, instead of dealing 500 billion, you're going to be dealing 300 billion. Maybe that's okay with you. Just replace this Dance Macabre board with the exploit weakness or cheap shot board. And the beautiful thing about Diablo, you can just kind of click things. You don't necessarily need to follow a guide. Trust your instincts. If something looks good, it probably is, at least when it comes to the current state of the Paragon. A little sneaky benefit of using Dance Macabre as well is we're getting more damage to close enemies here with these nodes, which boosts our key passive, so that is pretty juicy. And we're picking up the Turf Glyph, which is a ton of close damage. Finally, the Deadly Ambush board, and I'm using the Explosive Glyph in here. I must admit, I'm a little bit proud of myself because I have made some terrible builds in the past, but I think this is the first time where I hit it right. I'm rank 1 on the ladder. I did what no one else did. I hope you enjoyed this little guide and my package. Oh, and I answer every single question in the comments, so drop them there, and also click the planner link in the description to get all the details. Maybe you don't have a mythic. What are you gonna do? Well, just use a legendary and make the best out of the situation. It doesn't actually matter a lot of times. You just trust yourself. That's all I gotta say. And if you made it this far, if you want to look at this man, these juicy cheeks, if you want to be a part of me pushing tier 110, I've currently beaten tier 109. I'm gonna be streaming my attempts. Click my Twitch link in the description if you want to watch. Bye.